Hey y'all, happy Thursday. Um, can you believe we've almost made it to the end of the semester? Um, so this week for the discussion, we were talking about motivational interviewing and solution-focused brief counseling. And when I think about how the principles of motivational interviewing and solution-focused um, counseling are similar and how they're different. When I thought about their similarities, I realized, or I thought about that they are both client centered. They really focus on that the client is kind of like the expert of their own life. Uh, and they really focus on having the client really be the focus and the main person to really talk about their life. I also noticed that they are strength based. So they really focus on finding the strengths of the client instead of focusing on problems. Um, they're both very future oriented in the sense that they are both seeking to help the client find positive change and find ways to improve instead of just focusing on their deficits. Um, when I think about how they're different, I notice that with motivational interviewing, it's more about focusing on like the process of the counseling, um, and really trying to strengthen like that intrinsic motivation within the client as opposed to solution focused counseling. Their goal is more to find quick solutions, like to really move towards future goals, like not dwell on, their areas of need so much, but think about, okay, this is where we are, but how can we get to where we want to go? Um, and so I think that's one of the biggest differences is that solution focused therapy is more focused on the outcome as opposed to motivational interviewing focusing on the process. Sorry, I know I keep looking off a lot, but it's just where my notes are. Um, I also noticed that motivational interviewing kind of views client resistance as a signal or a sign that you need to change. Like us as counselors, we need to change how we're talking to the client, how we're approaching the situation. Um, where solution focused counseling is more of just like, let's focus on building solutions and not really talking about the problems. Um, when I think about, let's see, how do you see that they could be applied in a school setting with the pressures of teaching, performing, and time shortages? Um, I could see solution focused therapy or brief counseling being applied more, especially due to like time shortages. Um, Counselors tend to have a really large caseload, and if we are doing less sessions, really focusing on building positive change and trying to do it more rapidly, I think that would be easier to be applied in a school setting. When I think about my current school, I work in an early childhood campus. So we primarily work with pre K and kindergarten students. So I think that motivational interviewing would be kind of hard to do with them because, I mean, these kids are 4 and 5. They don't have that. sense of intrinsic motivation yet. Everything is very much like need for that instant gratification, like external motivation. Um, so I feel like for the current school that I work at and the current population that I work at or work with, solution focused brief counseling would be much more effective, because it allows the kids to focus on the future instead of the problem. Like they have a much harder time thinking about the specific problem that they have and how to work through that as opposed to thinking about, okay, like, so this is what happened, you know, what would you like to see happen in the future? Like, how can we change that? How can we move past this? And I think that might be a little bit easier for them to kind of think about. Because, like I said, like they're 4 and 5. I think also with solution focused brief counseling, um, it's really helpful if you use like visual aids with their scaling questions, like um, thinking about like in the classroom we talk about like zones of regulation and things like that. Um, I think using the visual aids is helpful because they are so little and like I think motivational interviewing is a little too abstract for them. I think that might be better for like older kids, maybe upper elementary, middle school. Um, but I just think some of the strategies that are used with solution focused therapy is just more applicable to the early childhood setting. Um, let me see. Considering the age level of the students you are or will be working with, think about ways that you could use these approaches in a creative and age appropriate way. So I think, like I was talking about earlier, like using the visual aids, um, like when you go to the doctor's office, ask like on a scale of 1 to 10, like, which smiley face shows how you're feeling or how sick you feel. So I feel like putting that on a scale uh, kind of makes it easier for kids to quantify how they're feeling. Um, I also thought about maybe using like weather analogies, like weather visual aids, like, how are you feeling? Like, how is this problem making you feel? Um, so when I think about just giving your positionality, your beliefs, in your community context, do you think you have a preference and why? Um, yeah, when thinking about like the population, the community, like the parents, the teachers at my campus, um, I definitely think that solution focused brief counseling is the way to go, just because it helps save on time. It really focuses on creating positive change. Um, and I just think that it is more helpful for the kids um, to visualize like an ideal future or how they want to move forward. Uh, when I think about, oh, sorry, what do you identify as your needs and strengths in the application of both approaches? Um, when I think about like some of the needs for the motivational interviewing, I think is really targeting those micro skills like asking questions, the affirmations, doing the reflective listening, really summarizing. Um, I think right now as a counselor in training, my skills aren't great, but definitely something that I'm working on. So I think fine tuning those micro skills, making sure that I'm using them. um, when we're doing that type of approach. Um, I think also in terms of a need for the solution focused um, type therapy is I feel like it really requires you to be a more of a glass half full type of person. And I feel like that's not something I generally am, like in my personality, like in my own personal life. So I think that's something like I definitely need to work on to remember to kind of focus on the strengths that the client already has and use that to build the solution. Um, so, in sum, do I find that these approaches are applicable to a school setting and why? What would be the limitations and assets of each in your school? I would think, yes, both of these are applicable in a school setting. I think because they both focus on positive change and helping the client find solutions. Um, they're very applicable. Um, However, I would say that again, I think depending on the like how much time the counselor truly has to work with kids, and then also taking into consideration the age of the children that you're going to be working with. So that's all I got. I hope everyone has a good rest of the week, and I'll be listening to y'all's or reading y'all's reflections.